I wonder if anybody listen to the news and hear that the international organization, them, especially the Red Cross and the humanitarian organization, them, is saying that the American government is not treating the prisoners that them capture and put in Guantanamo Bay as human beings. Yes, there's a serious thing going on out there. Them put them in a cage and transport them with them head cover and all these things. And then now the man Rumsden is saying that they are not prisoners of war. I hear President Bush say him declaring war against the people them who declare war on America. And now him capture some of the man them who declare war upon America and say them is not prisoner of war. The rules change. The reason for that, them don't want to comply to the Geneva Convention Constitution on war criminals. You understand? Them don't want to deal with that. So them create them own thing as them go on. We want to play a little prips thing where we get in Los Angeles over the weekend. I was in San Francisco, sorry. We was in San Francisco over the weekend, you know what I mean? Nice show we attend to. We was performing Yami Bolo. Yes, I think him gone to Hawaii. But we want to give you a little excerpt from a reasoning that was taking place on the radio over there. This is the cutting edge. We want them to remember that the Air Jamaica Jazz and Blues Festival will be in Montego Bay from the 8th to the 10th. Okay? The first artist to play is one of the artists them that is featured, Arabella Fante. You know that Arabella Fante used to go at Woolmar's, you know. Yeah. And I want the people them know this if you never know. The first ever million-selling album ever is Arabella Fante do it in the 50s. Yeah. And it was a Calypso album. You can't believe that. The first million-selling album ever was done by Arabella Fante in the 50s. So you have to know that. Okay. This is the cutting edge on RFM. As I said before, I want to take a clip because some serious thing are going on. Them still don't catch Mullah the brother there, Ben Laden, and the other brother who the head of the Taliban. And now we hear of some serious underdevelopment taking in Guantanamo Bay. Is that Wednesday? The 6th of February. Yes. The reason why we want to know what the 6th of February is. The 6th of February is Bob Marley's birthday, it's Black History Month. And the 6th of February, Cutting Edge going to give you some rare Bob Marley music. Yes. Not the regular, what love, what hard, let's get together and be alright. But some serious, for all those who love Bob Marley music. When we play Bob Marley music, well played. So, you see, through the 6th of February is Bob Marley's birthday. We're going to play some rare Bob Marley birthday music. You understand? That is 6th of February. But coming back to what we are talking about is that some serious things are going on in Guantanamo Bay. And the American government changed to suit themselves certain law that them signed to internationally. So we want to play this little clip. You know? We want to play this little clip for you. So here goes. This is a clip from a radio station in California. Here goes.
President Bush has approved allowing the Justice Department to charge American Taliban John Walker on the charges of aiding terrorism, meaning Walker will be tried by a civilian court, not a military tribunal. Attorney General John Ashcroft.
If convicted of these charges, Walker could receive life imprisonment. The United States does not casually or capriciously charge one of its own citizens with providing support to terrorists. We are compelled to do so today by the inescapable fact of September the 11th, a day that reminded us in no uncertain terms that we have enemies in the world and that destroy us.
Bush's proposal for military tribunals has come under increasing criticism in recent weeks, as has the Bush administration's treatment of captured Taliban prisoners. Over the last 20 Qaeda and Taliban prisoners have been flown to the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo, Cuba. They joined the 20 prisoners already being held there by the Pentagon. The treatment of the prisoners at Guantanamo is sparking outrage from human rights groups and has drawn the concern of some U.S. allies. Journey Scahill reports.
They've been sedated, hooded, and shackled. They're being held in open-air cages. These are not rare animals being shipped from their jungle homes to a zoo. They're al-Qaeda and Taliban prisoners being transported and held by the U.S. military at Guantanamo, Cuba. Now, U.S. soldiers have begun shaving the beards of the Muslim prisoners. The Pentagon's treatment of these detainees is sparking outrage from human rights groups and the International Committee of the Red Cross. And today it drew concern from Washington's closest ally in the so-called war on terror. Following statements by Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld that the prisoners would not be given rights under the Geneva Convention, the British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw called Secretary of State Colin Powell to discuss the treatment of 3 British citizens allegedly being held among the detainees. Today, Jack Straw spoke with the BBC.
Of course, they have rights. Whether or not technically they have rights under the Geneva Convention, they have rights in customary international law, and all of us who are either involved as their representatives, as their governments, or those holding them have obligations.
The Pentagon has classified the prisoners as unlawful combatants and not prisoners of war, using this to justify what human rights groups say are inhumane conditions under which the prisoners are being held at Guantanamo. This week, the International Committee of the Red Cross rejected the Pentagon's classification, saying it has no legal meaning. The Red Cross also said this week that the prisoners' rights are likely being violated, a view shared by international law experts.
What the United States is doing here is violating the Third Geneva Convention, which requires certain treatment of prisoners of war.
Attorney Michael Ratner from the Center for Constitutional Rights has spent years handling cases of detainees at Guantanamo Base in Cuba.
What the Geneva Conventions are very clear on is if someone may be a prisoner of war, or if there's any doubt about whether he's a prisoner of war, he must be treated as a prisoner of war. And he must be treated as a prisoner of war until a competent tribunal, in the words of the Geneva Convention, determines that the person is not a prisoner of war. Now, prisoners of war, of course, have incredible rights. Prisoners of war can only be housed in facilities that are similar to those that house U.S. troops. Prisoners of war cannot be tried by military tribunals. They must be tried by the same kind of tribunals that try U.S. soldiers. That would mean courts-martials, which give a great deal more rights.
Earlier this week, Human Rights Watch issued a statement decrying the treatment of the prisoners. And today, Amnesty International called for the prisoners to be afforded POW status. Amnesty spokesperson Vienna Colucci.
It is not the prerogative of the Secretary of Defense or any other U.S. administration official to make the determination as to the status of the prisoners at Guantanamo. What our statement today underscores is that this is a decision that an independent U.S. court must make. Amnesty International is concerned by reports that prisoners are being hooded, that they may be sedated, that they're being held in cages. And we reiterate that there's no justification for the United States to subject anyone to degrading treatment.
The Pentagon has refused to comment on whether it will hold its much-talked-about military tribunals at Guantanamo. But according to attorney Michael Ratner, all signals appear to be pointing in that direction.
They believe, and they argued this in my Haitian cases, that there's no U.S. court or law that applies to what they do to people in Guantanamo. Whether they're refugees, Taliban, or Al-Qaeda, they believe that no court can intervene or oversee what they're doing. Well, that's perfect for them. They can treat the people who they want to. They can use what they call Israeli pressure tactics or torture against them. They can try them essentially how they want and get away really with murder down there. The only question is where they bury the bodies.
For Free Speech Radio News, I'm Jeremy Scahill.
If you sign an international treaty that we ought to abide by. Now, you say that these are not prisoners of war. I mean, this bouncing definition gets a little hard to follow here, Ken. I mean, President Bush says that the terrorist acts were acts of war. He has said over and over again, we're at war against the Taliban. John Ashcroft says we have to have these extra security measures because we're at war. And now you say we're not at war, so therefore they're not prisoners of war.
Let me just tell you the difference.
When did it change?
Let me tell you the difference right here. And the difference is when you are at war with honest soldiers, they go after the military on the other side. They do not go after civilians. They have certain kind of procedures that have started in the Middle Ages about decency as combatants, as non-combatants, both in their behavior and what they are afterwards. If you are a soldier for an organized country, say like Italy or Germany or whatever in World War II, and that unit surrenders, you surrender and leave your arms. These guys go, they kill innocents, they wives, children, mothers, everything, and they go and after their unit surrenders, they pick up their arms once again. They're fanatics. They're not soldiers. They're fanatics.
To proceed from that point, Bianca Jagger, when in past wars, even the Vietnamese War, when they would have the surrender of military troops, that was the end of the war for them. But I want you to listen to what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Myers, has to say about these prisoners brought to Cuba. Let's listen.
I mean, these are people that would gnaw through hydraulic lines in the back of a C-17 to bring it down. I mean, so these are very, very dangerous people, and that's how they're being treated.
Don't you think they should be treated as various people?
Indeed, they should be treated as dangerous people, but as well, we should adhere by the Geneva Convention, and they should be treated as prisoners of war. It is not after Mr. Rumsfeld to determine whether they are or not prisoners of war. The United States declared war against terrorism, and now it is not convenient for the United States, and they are calling them not any longer prisoners of war. The reason why they are refusing to call them prisoners of war is because of three particular reasons. One is that if they were treated under the Geneva Convention, they will not be required to answer anything more than their names, their military ranks, and the place from where they come. And if they are going to be coerced into responding, then it will be in violation of the Geneva Convention. The other thing that will not be allowed under the Geneva Convention is that they be tried by a court that is not going to be properly constituted, as the military tribunals are going to be.
Mr. I wonder, go ahead.
Okay, but that's the point of not having them as prisoners of war. What we want is not so much taking them out of action, although that is very important. What we want is information from them. And if they get away with saying their name, and they don't have any serial number, so basically their name, which means practically nothing to us, that's not good enough. What we want to know is, A, are there other plans out there to attack innocent people in the United States or elsewhere around the world? B, who exactly was responsible for September 11th, and how did it happen? That's the information we need from these guys, above all.
Ms. Jagger, I wonder if you appreciate how angry the American people are about the fact that these people are part of a conspiracy that created such mayhem, such catastrophe in the United States, killing innocent people, mostly citizens of the United States, but citizens of many other countries. I think there would be a mass uprising in this country if they were treated as dignified prisoners of war, don't you?
What I want to say to you is that we all throughout the world understand the need for those who are guilty to be brought to justice. And what we do not understand is why, if probably many of the people who have been taken as prisoner are guilty and committed war crimes or crimes against humanity, why is it not being done openly in a court of justice where everybody around the world could rally behind the United States and accept and adhere to the rule of law and the Geneva Convention? Why is it that they want to do it in secrecy in a country far away and without allowing the Geneva Convention, which has in the past helped save the lives of many American prisoners, whether in Vietnam or in Korea?
But let me suggest to you that the important thing here is, and I know we want to get information from them. We're talking tonight about how they're being treated as prisoners of war, is what I would call them. But I think it's important to recognize this Geneva Convention. We signed it because it is a two-way street. It's a point made yesterday on Wolf Blitzer's show by Kenneth Roth of Human Rights Watch. I'd like you to listen to him, please, and then get your comment. Here he is.
It's important for the Pentagon to be following the Geneva Convention, because if it starts mistreating the detainees that it has, it loses its standing to protect American service members who might find themselves detained overseas. The Geneva Conventions are not there just to protect other people. They're there to protect American service members.
Wouldn't we be howling like mad if our guys were being kept in wire cages outside somewhere in the world?
Not if our guys had behaved at all to go after the World Trade Center and kill 3,000 innocent people. Not at all. whether they're American or not at all if our guys were as barbaric as these people and if they were as fanatical as these people. It's one thing to say, let's punish those who were involved in the past. But the main thing, Bill, is to keep us from being attacked again. And by God, I want to go the extra mile to make these guys talk. And to get these guys to talk, okay, but you need to make it uncomfortable.
I wanted to say that...
Go ahead, Ms. Jagger.
I wanted to say that this war, President Bush said, that we wanted to set standards for the rest of the world. And we have to set standards for the rest of the world. You have to have proper trials and adhere to the rule of law and allow these prisoners to have the protection under the Geneva Convention. Why do you want to send a message to the rest of the world that unilaterally the United States wants to change the set standards for the Geneva Convention and for prisoners of war?
I wouldn't change the set standards for prisoners of war. These aren't prisoners of war. They're not in an organized army that goes after
But the Red Cross says that they are prisoners of war.
Yeah, and let me read you something from the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention says that it requires that all prisoners be treated as presumptive prisoners of war until a competent tribunal determines otherwise. We are in fact, look what happened.
That the Defense Department wants to keep and to get information out of them. I don't see that it's inhumane treatment at all. I think what they have done is the most inhumane thing in the world. These people are cleaner than they have been in their life. They are better fed than they have been in their life, and so they wear hoods.
Let's go to the
Let me say something.
Go ahead.
What I wanted to say is that imagine that Americans were treated the way they have been treated. Why do we have a different standard and a different set of rules for us and for them? That's the reason why people regard Americans and us in the way that they are regarding us today. Don't we need to have an even justice for all, regardless of people's background, race, and creeds?
I want to get to the point, Mr. Jagger, of how they're actually being treated. People who haven't followed this might think we're torturing them, that we are depriving them of food, they're treating them badly. But I want you to listen to the Pentagon spokesman, Victoria Clark, what she had to say about it the other day.
Each day, the detainees are given 3 culturally appropriate meals. They have daily opportunities to shower, exercise, and receive medical attention. So in accordance with Geneva Convention, they are receiving very humane treatment.
And not only that, they're given towels, they're given toiletries. They're probably treated better than they've ever been treated in their life. So they are treated probably beyond the level of the Geneva Convention. What's all this belly aching about?
But the Red Cross have not been there. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Médecins Sans Frontières has not been there. Why shouldn't they be allowed to be able to check and see if it is true that they are adherent to the Geneva Convention?
Well, basically, the detainees just got there, so there isn't much time to do that. But I don't think there has been a double standard. If Americans behave in the way that these terrorists have behaved, then I think that they should be treated in the same way that these terrorists are being treated.
That has to be the last word. Ken Edelman, thanks so much for joining us. Bianca Jagger, thank you very much for joining us.
Mutabaruka on the continent. Segregation now go work.
More than a radio program, it's an institution on radio. The Cutting Edge on IRI FM.
Yes, I tell you, that was an excerpt from a radio program in California, but it's very interesting that the man should have said them want to get to the bottom of it and know exactly who was behind the World Trade Center. I thought they knew that already. And then it's very interesting to hear the man say, probably they are cleaner than they have ever been before. That is a very outright racist statement, you know. As a matter of fact, it's 2 racist statements I hear them make inside the soul, you know what I mean? Can you believe that, Rasta? Can you believe that? I bet you any money in life that the brother named Walker, which was the American Taliban fighter, will be treated in a very appropriate manner. I bet you any money to that effect. It's a serious, serious thing. And the last statement that the person make, what she say, where the man say, the woman say, the American woman say, they are giving exercise and thing according to the Geneva Convention stipulation, yet still them still not seen not as prisoner of war, but them is adhering to one part of the Geneva Convention, but not the other part, wheresoever it suit them. Very serious thing. Very, very serious thing. This is the Cutting Edge and IRFM coming through. Yeah, we're there with your Cutting Edge. A very interesting clip a while ago, you know, very interesting, you know. Reasoning about Geneva Convention and what it stipulates about prisoner of war, POWs, and America is right now declaring that the prisoners that them have in Guantanamo Bay is not prisoner of war, so them can do whatsoever them will, even torture them, which is not part of which is something that them signed to, you know, is a thing. And the Red Cross said them a treat them bad. The Red Cross said that, and them refuse to make amnesty go down there. Them don't want amnesty go down there, so amnesty come to Jamaica the other day and tell us that the police them is the worst police them in the world. So we don't know how that go. Cutting Edge, IRFM. As I said before, turn up your radio loud. Watch your bass. This is Dubwise and Otherwise. I want to give you one of the masters, world masters of dub music.